I stood in my kitchen at 4 a.m., the beach house silent except for the gentle crash of waves outside. My hands were perfectly steady as I measured out coffee grounds, though my heart hammered against my ribs. On the counter sat a small glass bottle, clear, innocent-looking, but containing something that would make this morning unforgettable. I kept seeing Cassandra's face from last night. That smirk. That entitled, condescending smirk that had haunted me since childhood. Make sure breakfast is on the table by 5 a.m. My husband likes things done his way. You're the host. After all. But I'm getting ahead of myself. 36 hours earlier, I'd been living my best life. Friday afternoon, warm sun on my face, sitting on the deck of the beach house I'd saved for years to buy. Every plank of wood, every window, every carefully chosen piece of furniture represented 60-hour work weeks and sacrifice. This place was mine, my sanctuary, my reward for clawing my way up as a freelance graphic designer in a brutal industry. I was sketching concepts for a client when I heard tires on gravel. I wasn't expecting anyone. My stomach dropped when I recognized the silver sedan pulling into my driveway. Cassandra, my younger sister, exploded out of the car like she owned the place, her laugh piercing the peaceful afternoon. A tall man emerged from the passenger side. Expensive suit, cold eyes, the kind of face that looked permanently annoyed. "Liv!" Cassandra squealed, rushing toward me with arms spread wide. "Surprise!" I stood slowly, setting down my tablet. "Cass, what are you doing here?" She grabbed my hands, shoving her left hand in my face. A massive diamond ring caught the sunlight, so gaudy it almost hurt to look at. "We got married last week in Vegas. This is Trevor." Trevor gave me the briefest nod, already pulling out his phone for what I'd learn was his permanent state business calls that made him seem important. My mind raced. Married? Cassandra had been dating someone named Brandon 3 months ago. Or was it Brian? Wow. Congratulations, I managed. But what are you doing here? Cassandra linked her arm through mine, practically dragging me toward my own front door. "We need a place to decompress for a couple of days. You know how stressful weddings are." "I live here, Cass, it's not empty." She waved her hand dismissively, already inside, looking around like a home inspector. "You know what I mean. You work from home. You're always here anyway. You won't even notice us." Trevor brushed past me without a word, phone pressed to his ear. Discussing market shares or profit margins or whatever made him feel superior. I should have said no right then. Should have explained that I had deadlines, that the guest room wasn't prepared, that showing up unannounced at someone's house, even family, wasn't okay. But old habits die hard. Cassandra had been pulling this kind of thing our whole lives. Mum always made excuses. She's spontaneous. She just loves you. Family helps family. So I smiled, nodded, showed them to the guest room. The afternoon deteriorated from there. Cassandra criticized my throw pillows too beachy, and rearranged my kitchen cabinets because the mugs should obviously go here. Trevor took over my living room for his calls, speaking loud enough that I couldn't concentrate on my work. Dinner was pasta because I hadn't planned for guests. Trevor took one bite and announced it was too al dente, with the kind of condescension usually reserved for telling children they've colored outside the lines. I was washing dishes when Cassandra cornered me in the kitchen. The sun had set. Trevor was on yet another call in the living room. She leaned against my counter, in my house with that smile. That's when she said it. "Make sure breakfast is on the table by 5 a.m. My husband likes things done his way." She paused, her smile widening. "You're the host, after all." Something inside me cracked. But I kept smiling. "Of course," I said sweetly. "What does Trevor like?" Cassandra's eyes lit up with victory. She pulled out her phone, scrolling through what I assumed were notes about Trevor's preferences, like he was royalty requiring specific protocols. Fresh squeezed orange juice. Obviously. Not from a carton. He can taste the difference. She didn't look up from her screen. "Eggs over medium, but the yolk can't be too runny. Whole wheat toast, cut diagonally, lightly buttered. And coffee." Good coffee, not whatever cheap stuff you probably buy. Each word felt like a small slap. I'd been buying premium beans from a local roaster for 3 years. Trevor appeared in the doorway, putting his arm around Cassandra in a gesture that seemed more possessive than affectionate. He looked at me the way someone might look at a hotel employee. "Successful people start early, Olivia," he said, my name sounding wrong in his mouth. "I've built 3 companies on discipline and routine. When you maintain certain standards, you expect others to respect them." I gripped the dish towel tighter. 5 a.m. is very early. That's the point. He said it like I was stupid. The world belongs to people who seize it while others are sleeping. "I assume you have oranges. The eggs need to be room temperature before cooking. And the coffee, what brand do you use?" "Local roaster," I said quietly. "Small batch, fair trade." He made a face. "Well, it'll have to do. Just make sure it's strong. I need at least 2 cups before I can function." Cassandra giggled, squeezing his arm. "He's so particular, but that's what I love. A man who knows what he wants." I wanted to laugh. This was her 3rd marriage. The first husband had been too boring. The second didn't appreciate her free spirit. Now she'd landed on someone who treated people like servants, and somehow this was love. "I'll make sure everything is perfect," I said, pulling out my phone to take notes. "Over medium eggs, diagonal toast, strong coffee. Anything else?" Trevor actually thought about it. The coffee should be served at exactly 180 degrees. Any cooler, and it's undrinkable. Any hotter, and it burns the tongue. I nodded, typing. Inside, rage was building like a pressure cooker. They finally retreated to the guest room around 9, their voices carrying through the walls as Cassandra gushed about how nice it is to relax, and Trevor made more calls despite the hour. I stood in my kitchen, my beautiful kitchen that I'd renovated myself, choosing every tile and felt tears of frustration burning behind my eyes. This house represented everything I'd worked for: independence, peace, a place where nobody could tell me what to do or make me feel small. And my sister had walked in and turned it into her personal bed and breakfast in under 6 hours. I stepped onto the deck, letting the ocean air cool my flushed face. The moon hung low over the water, painting everything silver. I pulled out my phone and texted Anton, my neighbor 2 houses down. "You awake?" 3 dots appeared immediately. "Always. You okay? Can you come over?" 5 minutes later, Anton appeared on my deck carrying 2 beers. He was a retired chef who'd bought his beach house after selling his restaurant in the city. We'd bonded over our love of morning coffee and peaceful silence. "Your sister?" he asked, handing me a beer. I told him everything. The unannounced arrival, the criticism, the demands. By the time I finished, Anton was shaking his head. "You know what I learned running a restaurant for 20 years? He leaned against the railing. "The moment you let someone disrespect your boundaries, they'll push further. Always. I had a regular who'd snap his fingers at my staff. I finally told him to leave and never come back. Best decision I ever made." "She's family," I said weakly. "So? Family doesn't mean doormat." He took a long drink. "What are you going to do?" I stared at the ocean, thinking about Cassandra's smirk, Trevor's condescension, all the years of being the accommodating sister who bent until she nearly broke. "I'm going to make them breakfast," I said slowly. "Exactly how they want it." Anton looked at me carefully, then smiled. "Need any help?" I set my alarm for 4 a.m. and went to bed with a plan forming. The alarm pierced the darkness at 4 a.m. I silenced it immediately, sitting up with the kind of clarity that only comes from righteous anger and a full night's sleep fueled by determination. I moved through my house like a ghost, every step deliberate. The kitchen lights hummed to life. I pulled out my cutting board, my good knives, the fancy juicer I rarely used. If they wanted perfection, I'd give them perfection, with a twist. I started with the oranges, cutting and squeezing until my hands ached and the glass pitcher filled with fresh juice. The eggs came out of the fridge to reach room temperature, just like Trevor specified. I sliced bread and arranged it on my nicest plates. Then I turned to the coffee. My hands hovered over the premium beans, the ones Trevor had essentially insulted. I pulled them out anyway, measuring the grounds with precision. Then I opened the cabinet under my sink and reached toward the back, where I'd shoved a bottle of pharmaceutical-grade laxative syrup 8 months ago. I'd bought it for a colonoscopy prep that got rescheduled, then forgotten about it. I held the bottle up to the light, thinking about the satisfaction of watching them spend the morning running to the bathroom. But my hand trembled. Too obvious. Too traceable. If either of them ended up in the hospital, there'd be questions, tests, evidence. I put the bottle back, disappointed, but not defeated. There had to be another way. Something that would make them miserable without landing me in legal trouble. I stood in my kitchen, staring at the coffee grounds, when I remembered something Anton had mentioned weeks ago. He made his own hot sauce. Not just any hot sauce, competition level, ghost pepper and Carolina Reaper hot sauce that won awards at county fairs. He'd laughed about having to use extracts because the peppers alone weren't enough for serious heat. Pure capsaicin concentrate, he'd said. Completely flavorless in the right amounts, but it'll light you up from the inside. I grabbed my phone and texted him. You still have that capsaicin extract? The response came in less than a minute. For cooking? Something like that. Be there in 5. Anton appeared at my back door in a bathrobe and slippers, holding a small amber bottle like it contained liquid gold. His eyes were knowing, amused, and he didn't ask a single question. How much are we talking? He asked instead. Enough to make them extremely uncomfortable, not enough to actually harm them. He nodded, measuring drops onto a spoon. 3 drops per cup. It won't taste like anything going down. Takes about 15 to 20 minutes to activate. Then it builds, burns the mouth, throat, eventually the stomach. Lasts for hours, because capsaicin doesn't break down easily in your system. Is it dangerous? Painful? Absolutely. Dangerous? No. They'll feel like they're dying, but they'll be fine. He handed me the bottle. Just don't use more than 3 drops. 4 or 5, and you're getting into territory that might need medical attention. I took the bottle carefully, like it might explode. Thank you. I was never here. He smiled, and disappeared back into the pre-dawn darkness. I measured the coffee grounds into the filter with shaking hands. 3 drops into the grounds before brewing. I counted each one. Then I started a second, completely normal pot of coffee for myself, and marked it with a small piece of tape on the handle. The coffee brewed, filling my kitchen with its rich aroma. I couldn't smell anything different about the doctored pot. Perfect. At exactly 4:58 a.m., I had everything arranged on the dining table like a magazine spread. Fresh squeezed orange juice in crystal glasses, eggs prepared to the exact specifications, still steaming, toast cut diagonally, lightly buttered, and 2 white ceramic mugs positioned at Trevor's and Cassandra's seats. I heard footsteps upstairs. My heart hammered against my ribs. The stairs creaked. Voices murmured. I stood in my kitchen, hand resting on the handle of the special coffee pot, and waited. The footsteps grew louder. Any second now, they'd walk through that doorway expecting me to serve them like hired help. I picked up the coffee pot, feeling its weight. The door opened. Trevor walked in first, already looking at his phone, barely acknowledging me. Cassandra followed, stretching dramatically like waking up at 5 was some incredible sacrifice she was making. Oh good, you actually did it, she said, scanning the table. Not thank you. Not this looks nice. Just confirmation that I'd obeyed. Trevor pulled out the chair at the head of my table, and sat like a king assuming his throne. He set his phone face up beside his plate, the screen lighting up every few seconds with notifications that made him seem important and busy. Coffee first, he said, not looking at me. Cassandra settled into the chair beside him, immediately pulling out her own phone. Yes, coffee. I'm dead without it. I lifted the special pot, my hand perfectly steady despite my racing pulse. The coffee poured smooth and dark into Trevor's cup, steam rising in delicate curls. Then Cassandra's cup. The liquid looked completely innocent, smelled like premium roasted beans, gave no indication of what it contained. Cream or sugar? I asked sweetly. Black, Trevor said, finally glancing up. Real coffee doesn't need additives. Cassandra nodded agreement, trying to match his sophistication, even though I'd seen her dump 4 sugars into gas station coffee 100 times. I poured my own cup from the marked pot and sat across from them, watching over the rim as Trevor took his first sip. He paused, took another sip, nodded with approval. Finally, decent coffee. He took a longer drink. See, Cassandra? When you maintain standards, people rise to meet them. My sister beamed at him like he'd said something profound, instead of incredibly condescending. She sipped her own coffee, scrolling through social media with one hand. 5 minutes passed. I nibbled toast from my safe plate, drinking my safe coffee. Trevor dominated the conversation, lecturing about his business philosophy, while Cassandra made admiring noises. Success is about discipline. Most people are lazy. They want things handed to them. That's why I've always insisted on excellence in everything. 10 minutes. He drained his cup and reached for the pot himself, pouring a second serving. Cassandra did the same. We might stay longer than a couple days, Cassandra announced, not asking, telling. Like maybe a week or 2. The beach air is so good for Trevor's stress levels. And honestly, Liv, it's not like you're using all this space. You don't even have a boyfriend to fill it with. The dig was casual, practiced. She'd been making comments about my single status since her first wedding 5 years ago, 15 minutes since the first sip. And financially, it makes sense for us right now, Cassandra continued. Trevor's between opportunities at the moment, restructuring his portfolio or whatever. Right, honey? Trevor's jaw tightened slightly. I'm being selective about my next venture. When you're in demand, you can afford to wait for the right offer. Translation: he was unemployed, and they were broke. That's why they'd shown up at my door. 20 minutes. Trevor shifted in his seat, just slightly, but I noticed. He took another long drink of coffee, and I watched his Adam's apple bob as he swallowed. 22 minutes. He tugged at his collar. A tiny bead of sweat appeared near his temple despite the cool morning air flowing through the open windows. Cassandra fanned herself with one hand. Is it warm in here? The humidity, I offered innocently. Takes some getting used to. 25 minutes. Trevor stood abruptly, his chair scraping against my hardwood floors. He cleared his throat. His face was starting to flush, a pink creeping up from his neck. Excuse me. He walked toward the bathroom, his gait slightly stiff. I watched him go, sipping my perfectly normal coffee. Cassandra frowned at her phone, then at her coffee cup, then pressed a hand to her stomach. I feel weird. Maybe you're not used to fresh squeezed juice, I suggested. 30 minutes. Trevor returned but didn't sit. He stood gripping the back of his chair, and I could see sweat now clearly visible on his forehead. His face had deepened from pink to red. He grabbed his coffee cup and drained it, trying to wash away whatever he was feeling. That's when his eyes went wide. Trevor's mouth opened slightly, his breathing becoming shallow and quick. His face transformed from red to crimson, sweat now running down his temples in visible streams. Is it? He pulled at his collar again, loosening his tie with frantic fingers. Is it hot in here? Why is it so hot? I glanced at the thermostat. It's 68 degrees. Cassandra pushed her chair back, fanning herself desperately with both hands now. Her carefully applied makeup was beginning to run, mascara creating tiny black rivers down her cheeks. Something's wrong. I feel my mouth feels weird. Trevor grabbed a glass of water and gulped it down. Then another. Then a third. I knew from Anton's explanation that water would only spread the capsaicin around, making it worse. The look on Trevor's face confirmed it. His eyes widened in panic as the burning intensified instead of subsiding. What's happening? Cassandra gasped, pressing her hands to her cheeks. My face is on fire. My whole mouth. Trevor stumbled toward the sink, turned on the faucet, and put his mouth directly under the stream. He drank desperately, water spilling down his expensive shirt. When he pulled back, gasping, his face was soaked and redder than before. My throat, he choked out. It's burning. It's like, he clutched at his chest, his expensive watch catching the light as his hand shook. Cassandra stood on wobbling legs, her phone clattering to the floor. What did you do? Olivia, what did you do? I set down my coffee cup slowly, meeting her eyes with perfect innocence. I made breakfast, exactly how you demanded: fresh squeezed orange juice, eggs over medium, diagonal toast, strong coffee. I paused. Is something wrong with it? Trevor whirled from the sink, water dripping from his chin, his composure completely shattered. The coffee, something's in the coffee. Premium beans from the local roaster, I said calmly. The one you insulted last night. Though I did make it strong, like you requested. Cassandra's eyes were watering now, tears mixing with ruined makeup. She reached for her water glass with trembling hands and drank it all. It's not helping. Nothing's helping. Why won't it stop? Because capsaicin is an oil, I thought. Water can't wash away oil. But I didn't say that. Trevor's breathing became more labored. The burning had clearly moved beyond his mouth and throat now. His hand moved to his stomach, pressing against it as his face contorted. I need bathroom. The capsaicin had entered his digestive system. He ran. Actually ran through my house, his expensive shoes slapping against the hardwood, taking the stairs 2 at a time. I heard the bathroom door slam so hard a picture frame rattled on the wall. Cassandra stared after him, then at me, then clutched her own stomach as realization and pain hit simultaneously. No. No, no, no. She ran too, heading for the downstairs bathroom. That door slammed, just as hard. I sat at my dining table, surrounded by the perfect breakfast I'd prepared, and took another sip of my normal, delicious, completely safe coffee. For the next 20 minutes, I listened to the sounds of my beach house being occupied by 2 people in absolute misery. Doors opening and slamming, footsteps running, shouted arguments about who got which bathroom. The toilet flushing, again and again. Trevor's voice carried down the stairs. Move, I need just move. Cassandra's response was muffled but clearly distressed. I can't. More running. A door slamming. Someone I couldn't tell who let out a groan that echoed through the house. I picked up my plate and moved to the deck, bringing my coffee with me. The sun was rising over the ocean, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. Seabirds called to each other. Waves rolled in with their eternal rhythm. Behind me, through the open door, I heard Trevor's voice crack. What is wrong with us? Cassandra sobbed something incomprehensible. I checked my watch. The capsaicin wouldn't break down for hours. They'd feel every minute of it, the burning, the cramping, the desperate need that came in waves just when they thought it might be over. Around 11 o'clock, I heard footsteps on the stairs. Slow, defeated footsteps. Cassandra appeared in the doorway. Cassandra looked like she'd aged 10 years in 6 hours. Her hair hung in limp strands around her face, all the product sweated out. Her makeup was completely gone, revealing blotchy skin and swollen eyes. The designer outfit she'd worn to impress me was wrinkled and damp with perspiration. We're leaving, she said, her voice hoarse and weak. I looked up from my book, taking a slow sip of my 3rd cup of perfect coffee. So soon? I thought you were staying for a couple of days. Maybe a week or 2. Her jaw clenched. Even that small movement seemed to cause her pain. We're leaving. Now. Trevor appeared behind her, looking somehow worse. His expensive suit was destroyed, shirt untucked and stained with sweat and water. His face was pale now, instead of red, a sickly greenish pale that suggested his body had been through war. He wouldn't look at me, just leaned against the doorframe like it was the only thing keeping him upright. Do you need help packing? I asked pleasantly. Cassandra's hands balled into fists. I could see her wanting to scream at me, but whatever was still happening in her digestive system prevented any aggressive movements. She turned slowly and shuffled back toward the guest room. I followed at a distance, watching as they threw clothes into suitcases with shaking hands. Trevor moved like every step hurt. He probably still felt like his insides were on fire, because they were. Capsaicin doesn't apologize or quit early. You know, Cassandra said without turning around, folding a shirt with trembling fingers. Wait until Mum hears about this. There it was. The threat she'd been using since childhood. Tell Mum. Mum will be upset with you. Mum will take my side. Here's about what exactly? I leaned against the doorframe, mirroring Trevor's earlier position. That I made breakfast for my sister and her new husband. That I woke up at 4 in the morning to squeeze fresh oranges and prepare eggs to exact specifications. You poisoned us. She spun around, eyes blazing despite her weakened state. You put something in that coffee. Premium beans, I said calmly. Strong, like Trevor requested. Served at the proper temperature. Was there something wrong with it? Trevor finally spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. We both know what you did, do we? I pulled out my phone, scrolling to the photos I'd taken the night before. Because all I know is that my sister showed up unannounced at my house with a stranger I'd never met. That she made demands about breakfast at 5 in the morning. That her husband specified exactly how he wanted everything prepared. I turned the phone around, showing them the text conversation with our mother from last night. Cassandra's face went from pale to white as she read. I'd sent Mom a photo of them at dinner, along with the message, "Look who showed up without calling." Cass brought her new husband. Already making demands and talking about staying for weeks. Mum's response, "Oh no, what did she do now?" "I'm so sorry, honey. You don't have to let them stay. I know how she gets." I'd responded, "Don't worry. I'll take care of it." Mum had sent back a heart emoji. And, "Set boundaries. I should have taught both of you that better." Cassandra stared at the screen, something crumbling behind her eyes. The text chain continued with Mum apologizing for enabling her all these years and saying she was proud of me for standing up for myself. "Tell her," I said quietly. "Please. Tell Mum that I made you the breakfast you demanded, in my house that you invaded, after treating me like hired help. I'd love to hear that conversation." Trevor zipped his suitcase with fumbling fingers. "Cassandra. Let's just go." But Cassandra wasn't done. She never knew when to quit. "You can't treat family this way." "I can't." The words came out sharper than I intended. "You show up unannounced. You criticize my home. You announce you're staying indefinitely. You order me to make breakfast at 5 in the morning with specific demands. You smirk while telling me my job as the host is to serve you." My voice rose with each sentence. "And I can't treat you badly. Where was family when you were treating me like a servant?" A horn honked outside. We all froze. I walked to the window and looked out. Anton stood beside a red sedan in my driveway, arms crossed, looking up at the house with a calm, knowing expression. Anton waved up at the window, casual and unbothered, like he just happened to be standing in my driveway at 11 in the morning. I saw the small amber bottle in his hand, held up just enough for me to see from the second floor. My stomach dropped. Cassandra pushed past me to look out the window. "Who is that?" "My neighbor," I said carefully. Trevor grabbed his suitcase, movements still stiff and pained. "We're leaving. Now." They hauled their bags down the stairs, Cassandra gripping the railing with white knuckles, Trevor pausing every few steps like the movement was agony. I followed behind them, my heart hammering as we approached the front door. Anton smiled warmly as they emerged onto the porch. "Morning, folks. Heading out already?" Trevor wouldn't even look at him, making a straight line for their car. But Cassandra stopped, suspicious, her eyes narrowing at this friendly stranger, who'd appeared at exactly the wrong moment. "You must be Olivia's sister," Anton continued, his voice loud and cheerful. "Hope you enjoyed your stay." "And that breakfast?" He paused, looking directly at me with twinkling eyes. "How was that special hot sauce extract, Olivia? Powerful stuff, isn't it?" The words hung in the air like a bomb. Cassandra's mouth fell open. Her eyes darted from Anton to me to the bottle in his hand. Understanding flooded her face, not just understanding, but confirmation of what she'd suspected but couldn't prove. "You," she started, her voice shaking. "You planned this. You put something in our coffee. He just admitted it." I stepped forward, and the calmness I felt surprised even me. "You showed up at my house without asking. You brought a stranger I'd never met. You made demands like I was your employee. You treated me like hired help in my home that I worked years to afford. Family is supposed to help family. The old refrain, the one she'd used our entire lives. You've been saying that since we were kids, I said, my voice steady but edged with steel. When you needed rent money because you spent yours on a trip to Miami 3 different times. When you crashed my college graduation party with your drama about boyfriend number whatever, making the whole day about you. When you borrowed my car for a weekend and returned it with an empty tank and a dent you never mentioned. I helped, every single time. But help requires respect, Cassandra. Trevor had the car door open, already sliding into the driver's seat. Cassandra, let's go. But she stood there, trembling with rage and residual pain, and something else, maybe humiliation, maybe the first crack in her armor of entitlement. I'm your sister. Then act like it, I said quietly. Sisters don't exploit each other. They don't show up with smirks and demands. They don't treat each other's homes like free hotels with unpaid staff. They don't take and take and take and then act offended when someone finally says enough. Her eyes filled with tears, real ones this time. Not from capsaicin. Something shifted in her expression. Maybe understanding. Maybe just defeat. Maybe the first glimmer of self-awareness she'd had in years. She opened her mouth, closed it, then got in the car without another word. Trevor started the engine immediately. I watched their car pull away, gravel crunching under the tires, until it disappeared down the coastal road. The weight I'd been carrying not just from this weekend, but from years of being the accommodating sister, the understanding one, the person who bent until she nearly broke, lifted from my shoulders. Anton walked over and stood beside me. That was handled well, was it? I was suddenly exhausted. Boundaries aren't mean, Olivia. They're necessary. You didn't poison them. You made them uncomfortable. There's a difference. My phone buzzed. Mum calling, I answered. Before you say anything, I started. Cassandra just called me, Mum interrupted, crying, saying you put hot sauce in her coffee. I waited, holding my breath. I told her she had it coming. Mum's voice was firm. I've made excuses for her too long. Enabled her. I'm sorry I never taught either of you proper boundaries, but I'm proud of you for setting them now. My throat tightened. Thanks, Mom. Are you okay? I looked at my beach house, my sanctuary, no longer invaded. I'm perfect. After we hung up, my phone buzzed again. That was cruel. I typed back. That was consequence. There's a difference. You're welcome back when you learn it. I didn't expect a response and didn't get one. Anton brought over pastries from his kitchen. We sat on the deck with fresh coffee, normal, delicious coffee, watching the waves roll in. Think she learned anything? He asked. I considered this while a seagull cried overhead. Maybe. Maybe not. But I learned something. What's that? That protecting your peace isn't selfish. It's survival. The afternoon sun warmed the deck, and I felt it warming something inside me too. For years I'd been the sister who accommodated, who sacrificed, who swallowed her anger to keep the peace. I'd let Cassandra walk over me, because that's what family did, or so I'd been told. But this house behind me, every window, every carefully chosen piece of furniture, every morning I woke up to ocean sounds, represented something she'd never understood: dignity, self-respect, the right to say no. My phone stayed silent. No angry follow-up texts from Cassandra, no calls from relatives she'd recruited to her side, just silence, and the waves, and the best cup of coffee I'd had in years. Anton raised his mug. To boundaries. I clinked mine against his. To boundaries. The beach stretched before us, endless and free. And for the first time in longer than I could remember, I felt exactly the same way. Not guilty, not cruel, not sorry, just free. My beach house stood behind me, no longer invaded, no longer disrespected, just mine, the way it should be, the way it would stay. And if Cassandra ever learned what boundaries actually meant, what respect looked like, what family should be, my door might open again. But until then, I had everything I needed right here.